Hello and welcome to a very special Warhammer Wednesday. In this Wednesday's video I will be reviewing the Demons of Nurgle Great Unclean one. This model will cost you £85. It's a huge amount of money. It's the same price as the Primarch of the Death Guard, Mortarion, which I'll do a size comparison in a moment. He's a huge model. I've had to drop the camera down low just to fit his thickness in. This is pretty much a thickness special. This model is so thick. You will find him in your Chaos Demons Codex, the new one. He's not in the Death Guard Codex as a little character or anything like that. But this model, it comes with such a nice box, a great instruction guide. You can build 3 versions of him. You can have about 6 different weapon options. You can change this flail to like a dagger. Instead of the big sword, you can have a bell. You've got 3 different heads. You can turn it into a special character called Rotigus. So it gives you lots and lots of options. You get these little Nurglings. I think you get 6 Nurglings. I said before, this set really is you're buying 6 Nurglings and you're getting a Great Unclean one with all the spare parts. Not only that, there are a couple of videos out there already of people being able to magnetise both the heads and the weapons. So there is that possibility if you wanted to make the most of the model and all the different options for every kind of eventuality. As I said before, I'm a builder and collector more than a gamer or a painter. So for me, this model, I've glued it all, had it in a static pose, and if I was to get another one, I probably would actually go for the Rotigus model, because I really like that too. But yeah, how much detail is on this model? Well, obviously you get a lot of detail with the Nurglings. This one, this kind of Nurgling champion with the sword and a cloak and armour and things is pretty cool. This one just hanging off the tentacles of the Great Unclean one, swinging this incense kind of ball or bomb or whatever it is. That is very reminiscent, shares a lot of aesthetics with the rest of the Death Guard models actually, as well as the models in the other Nurgle range. How easy was this one to build? Well, very easy. For £85, it doesn't really give you much of a challenge at all. It doesn't come in that many parts. It gives you lots of options. One thing I will say is you might get some gaps, because these are big slabs of plastic. You might get some gaps in places. My best advice really is to use plenty of the plastic cement, the plastic glue to, really make a good bond, and really try and squeeze these parts together as firmly as possible. And if that fails, as you can see, what I've done is I've put some liquid green stuff in the joins, and then once it's sprayed and washed, you're not really going to notice those gaps either. Also, there you get another little squished Nurgle there. Pretty cool. I'll just zoom in on him if you can see him. Yeah, great amount of detail there. Really impressed with this model, with the detail. I'm not sure whether it beats the Forge World Great Unclean one, but you've got to remember, guys, that one is £40 more. I did a little kind of unofficial kind of survey on my Instagram, and most people preferred the Forge World one to this one. I think they both have their pluses and minuses. I think with this one it's great because you've got all those different weapon options. With the Forge World one, it is a named character, which is in the Chaos Index book from Forge World. And I suppose you could really use it as one like this if you wanted to. But they are a similar sort of size. I wanted to get it and show you the size comparison, but unfortunately sort of run out of time to do this review for that comparison. But there you go, lots of detail, lots going on. I do think it is worth the £85, definitely, especially if you want a big kind of centrepiece to your Nurgle army. I'm looking forward to Slaanesh, if they bring a Slaanesh Demon out. Slaanesh is due for one. You can get one at Forge World at the moment, which is a good looking model, but they are getting quite old now. So hopefully that's not too far around the corner. Let's do some size comparisons then. So, comparing it to other models in the Nurgle range, this is a Plague Bearer. As you can see, it absolutely dwarfs, your normal like Plague Bearer. You can see one of these towering above the rest of your Nurgle forces, and these bellowing charge orders to these going forward. Next to the Scrivener, which is actually quite a big model compared to like the Plague Bearers. He is a bit taller, got more of a presence with that much larger base too. I've got Horticulus Slimucks here. which probably goes up to, I want to say, sort of the chin. I mean, it's not a thick model by any means, but it is quite a tall model because of the tree and the loppers and things. So that sort of gives you a comparison there. Moving on to Death Guard models, I've got my favourite looking model, the Mythitic Blight Hauler. You know, you can fit a couple of these Blight Haulers inside one of these greater Daemons, Great Unclean ones. Blight Hauler is probably sort of medium-sized model, so it just goes to show you how much bigger one of these is. And then finally, the best sort of comparison I wanted to give you is one with Mortarion. Now, obviously, Mortarion doesn't have nearly as much thickness as the Great Unclean one, but it does trump him on height. You know, with the wings and things, a lot of presence there, but it just goes to show you just how small the body is of Mortarion, and it's not a small model anyway. How small the body is compared to this Great Unclean one. Probably show you a better sort of comparison this way. So there you go. Both models, £85, and I just thought it would be relevant for me to show you these. The Great Unclean one isn't in the Death Guard Codex, and obviously Mortarion isn't in the Chaos Demons Codex, but I thought I'd just show you this this comparison there. Mortarion looks, you know, very thin next to this Great Unclean one, but I think any model does. Even Custodes, Aquila and Terminators look thin next to this guy. He's definitely the thickest model. Next to some Imperial models, I've got a Redemptor Dreadnought. He is bigger than a Redemptor Dreadnought, and Redemptor Dreadnought is pretty thick, as you can see there. So he's going to smash and batter into one of those, no problem. And then next to a couple of Space Marines, so you've got Space Marine and then you've got a Primaris. So yeah, he's going to dwarf those standard sort of troop types too. The final little comparison isn't Imperial, but I just wanted to put it on here anyway, which is the tree, the Feculent Narmor. The tree is, you know, slightly smaller, but then again, it's not on a base. On a base, it would be a little bit taller, but then you've got the sword that adds to the height. But the tree is actually smaller than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a little bit bigger than this, but I'm looking around for bases on Games Workshop's website, and I think I will invest and get a base for the tree as well. Even though it can't move, I think it would work well for this little army. Before I go, I just want to show you the spare parts for this Great Unclean one. You do get a fair bit, unlike Mortarion, where you don't really get many. Look at how many you get, my lord. You get this, which is obviously part of the sort of Cyclops head. This arm, a load of detail there for Rotigus if you choose to build that. And you get the staff. Unfortunately, staff isn't separate, so if you wanted to use that as a tree or whatever, it's going to be hard to cut around the fist there. You get the other sort of mouth part. You get the tongue with the little head on somewhere. Yeah, there's the head. So you just put that, this little demon head sort of through there like so. You get part of the cloak thing for it, for Rotigus. You get 3 more Nurglings. Here they are. So you get 6 in total. You get the little champion with the sword, the one with the incense, and the squished one. And you get these 3. So you get this one just chilling out. You get this one that's like a little bit of a Rotigus, which if I got a second one, I'd definitely use. And then you get this one with the mace. I mean, nothing stopping you from putting them all on the model, I suppose, if you really wanted to, or even on their own separate base. However, this one doesn't really have a back to him because he's meant to sort of fit on the Great Unclean one itself. You get another fist, part of the bell, I think it is. Speaking of which, this is the bell. It's quite a big bell, actually. You know, compare that to a Space Marine. It is, yeah, well, with the hooks, it's taller than a Space Marine. So that's a big bell there. Speaking of big things, here's the bar blade. Like a little hooked dagger with some skulls in. Then you get the mouth part for the sort of belly instead of the intestines. You get the Cyclops head, which is fantastic. Yeah, and as you can see, you just put that on there like so. So I mean, that look quite cool, like on a wall maybe, or you know, on a door. That would be pretty cool as a scenery piece. Part of a fist, part of the slimes for the hand that's you know, reaching out forwards for Rotigus. And there's Rotigus's amazing face with these, it's just vomiting up a load of maggots and things. And there's another hand too. So yeah, you do get a fair few parts. I do question the usability of them, other than the Nurglings, but I just thought I'd add this to the review to show you what you do get left over with this model. So now we're into my part of the review where I'll talk to you about all of the rules for the Great Unclean one. You'll find him in your brand new Chaos Demons Codex for Warhammer 40,000. Obviously he's an Age of Sigmar model too, and I'll be talking about those rules after the 40k rules. And the Age of Sigmar rules do come in the instruction book that you get with the model, so it's just another reason of hanging on to that instruction book, because you get the 40k rules and the Age of Sigmar rules. So we'll start off with the Warhammer 40,000 rules. The Great Unclean one is 17 power points. You'll find them in the HQ section of the Codex. They split the Codex, I'll talk about it in the review, but they split the Codex into your normal HQ troops, elites and things like that, but they include all the factions within those, and I have some sort of strong feelings about that. But the Great Unclean one in the HQ section, 17 power points. The points cost of the unit really depends on its loadout. The one there, which has the Bile Sword and the Plague Flail, is 325 points. It's a fair amount of points for match play. I'll go through its stat line. So its base stat line is movement 7 inches, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 3+, strength is 7, toughness 7, wounds of 18, attacks 5, leadership 10, and a save of 6+. Obviously it's demonic, so we'll talk about the save later on. Unfortunately, as it's damaged, some of its characteristics changes. So if it's got remaining wounds of between 10 and 18, its movement is 7 inches, strength 7, attacks 5. But if it's between 5 and 9 wounds, then the movement drops to 5 inches, strength 6, and 4 attacks. And finally, when it's between 1 and 4 wounds, it moves a very sluggish 3 inches, hardly worth moving at all. Strength 5 still, and still 3 attacks. Now, it's a single model armed with a Plague Flail and Bile Sword, so that's its typical standard loadout. It's also attended by Nurglings that attack with their claws and teeth. Now, it's got a number of weapon options and they're all pretty decent. I've gone for the Plague Flail because I really like it, but the Doomsday Bell is another very potent weapon that can also buff your army. I'll talk about those. So the Plague Flail, which this one's equipped with, it's a range 7-inch weapon, assault 3, strength user, which will be 7, well it depends on the amount of wounds, AP -3, damage 2. Now its abilities, it can also be fired within 1 inch of enemy units and can target enemy units within 1 inch of friendly units. Excess damage from the weapon is also not lost, and instead you keep allocating the damage to another model in the target unit until either all the damage has been allocated or the unit has been destroyed. So pretty decent. It reminds me of like the flail of corruptions that the you know, that the Blightlord Terminators have. The Bile Blade. It's a melee weapon, strength user, so that'd be 7, AP -3, damage D3, and you can reroll failed wounds for the weapon. So nothing amazing there. Bile Sword. Again, this one a bit better than a Bile Blade because it adds +1 for the strength, and its damage is actually now D6. So you got a chance of getting that D6 damage, and again you can reroll failed wounds for the weapon. And finally, the Doomsday Bell, which has an extra sort of ability. It's a melee weapon. Again, adds 1 strength to the user. That's pretty cool. AP is a bit pants though. It's only -1, and the damage is only D3. The attendant's claws and teeth for the Nurgling side of the model. Strength is only 2, AP is nothing, and damage is only 1. And each time the Nurgling fights, it can make D6 additional attacks with the weapon, and you can re-roll wound rolls for 1 of these attacks. So it gives you an extra little, you know, section of attacking. The war gear options, it can replace its Bile Sword with a Doomsday Bell, and also it can replace its Plague Flail with a Bile Blade. So you've got lots of different options with these big weapons. So its abilities, it's got Demonic, Disgusting Resilient, and Demonic Ritual. So Demonic just means it has a 5+ invulnerable, so you've got toughness 7 here with 18 wounds with a 5+ invuln. Disgustingly Resilient obviously means you can, if every time it takes a wound on a 5+, it doesn't lose the wound. And then Demonic Ritual Basically, instead of moving in the movement phase, a Chaos character can attempt to summon the Demon using the demonic ritual. And if they do so, you choose one of the 4 gods who owes the allegiance to one of the dark gods. So obviously, a Khorne character can only summon Khorne demons. You roll up to 3 dice, and that's your summoning roll, and you can summon 1 new unit with the demonic ritual ability to the battlefield that has a power rating equal to or less than the total result, as long as it has the same Chaos god keyword. So that's going to be pretty difficult with the power level of sort of 17 for this one. If your summoning roll included any doubles, and then your character suffers a mortal wound. If it contains any triples, then it suffers D3 mortal wounds. So there are, you know, negative factors for summoning. Greater Demon. Friendly Nurgle demon units within 6 inches of this model, when they take morale tests, can use this model's leadership instead of their own. And that's pretty good, because its leadership is 10. Putrid Offering. If you equip your Great Unclean One with a bar blade, it can use it to hook out a portion of its own rotting guts. So bar blade, not bar sword, but bar blade, as an offering to Nurgle each time it attempts to manifest a psychic power. If it does so, Great Unclean One immediately suffers a mortal wound, which you may attempt to ignore through Disgustingly Resilient before you take the psychic test, but you can then add 1 to the result. Crushing Bulk. Roll a d6 at the end of your charge phase if the model made a successful charge during that phase. And on a 4+, so you've got 50-50 chance, you can select 1 enemy unit within 1 inch to suffer a mortal wound. And then finally, going back to the bell, you've got this ability called Reverberating Summons. If the Great Unclean One with the Doomsday Bell attempts to summon a unit of Nurgle demons to the battlefield using demonic ritual, you can roll 4 dice instead of 3 for the summoning roll. In addition, at the start of each of your turns, you may roll a d6 for each Nurgle demon unit within 7 inches of any friendly Great Unclean Ones with a Doomsday Bell, and on a 4+, a single stain model is returned to that unit. That's pretty cool that it can start, you know, returning those slain models to it. The Great Unclean One is a Psyker, believe it or not, and it can attempt to manifest 2 psychic powers in each friendly psychic phase and attempt to deny 1 psychic power in each enemy phase. It knows a Smite psychic power and 2 psychic powers from the Nurgle discipline, which are specific to this Chaos Codex. On a d6 result, you've got between 1 and 6. Number 1 is Stream of Corruption, 2 is Fleshy Abundance, 3 is Nurgle's Rot, 4 is Shriveling Pox, 5 is Virulent Blessing, and 6 is Miasma of Pestilence. I'll go through those psychic powers in the actual Codex review. If you want me to do a separate video of just the psychic powers for all of the Chaos Demons, I'm more than happy to do a video. If you want to request that, just put it in the comments below. And the faction keywords, obviously it's Chaos, Nurgle and Demon, and it's Character, Monster, Psyker, Great Unclean One. So pretty horrific. It doesn't have many attacks with only the 5. Its weapons do varying amounts of damage and different APs. Obviously the best AP you've got there is a -3. It's quite strong with a strength 7. Its toughness is only 7 though, but I think the character in the Index 412 book is toughness 9. So, you know, bear that in mind. Yes, its ballistic skill is only 3+, but that's not too bad. Its weapon skill is great at 2+ though. It's got a lot of wounds, it's got its 5+ invulnerable, and it's got the Disgustingly Resilient, and it's got a 50-50 chance of causing a mortal wound for the first time in combat. Personally, I would have thought it would have had an extra kind of ability. I've always thought these Great Unclean Ones were sort of like the bringers of plagues and diseases and all kinds of horrible things, and I would have thought it would have had like an aura of pestilence where anything within a 3 or 6 inch range slowly started to decay, and that would be prevalent by reducing the toughness down by 1 or something like that. That's what I would have liked to have seen with this Great Unclean One, just to make it more of a sort of a character kind of thing, rather than just a bigger model with more wounds and summoning buffs. But there you go. Let me just go over the Age of Sigmar rules. I'm not into Age of Sigmar at all, but I think I'll just go through them anyway for people that are interested. So it's got a movement of 5 inches, 16 wounds, save of 4+, and bravery 10. Missile weapons, it's got Noxious Bile, which is range 7 inches, d6 attacks, 3+ to hit, Rend is -2 and damage 1. The melee weapons, it's got everything from the Plague Flail, the massive Bile Sword, the Bar Blade, the Doomsday Bell, and the host of Nurglings. The damage table, the wounds allocated 0 to 3 for Noxious Bile is 2+, Plague Flail is 2+, Massive Bile Sword is 3, and you've got everything from wounds allocated all the way up to 13+. Its abilities, it's got Blubber and Bile, basically a bit like Disgustingly Resilient, and also 6+. In the combat phase, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound after all attacks have been made. Corpulent Mass. In the hero phase, you can heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to this model. See, I'd like to see something like that added to this. Mountain of Loathsome Flesh. You roll a dice for an enemy unit within 1 inches, and they suffer D3 mortal wounds, so a bit like the Crush and Bulk thing. Putrid Offering, pretty much the same. Reverberating Summon, that just adds 3 inches to a Nurgle unit that begins its movement phase within 7 inches of the Great Unclean one. Command ability, you've got Grandfather's Joy. You can use this command ability in your hero phase, and if you do, you pick a friendly Nurgle demon unit within 21 inches of this model, and you add 1 to the attack's characteristics of all melee weapons used by that unit until the next of your hero phase. Magic, it is a wizard, and can attempt to cast 2 spells in the hero phase, and attempt to unbind 2 spells in the enemy hero phase. It knows Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and Plague Wind spells. And Plague Wind has a casting value of 7, and if successfully cast, you pick a point in the battlefield within 14 inches of the caster and draw an imaginary straight line between it and the closest part of the caster. Each unit, friend or foe, crossed by the centre of the line suffers D3 mortal wounds. Units with the Nurgle keyword are instead invigorated by the Plague Wind. If it passes over them, you heal D3 wounds that have been allocated to this unit. So to me, that just seems like there's a lot more abilities and rules and things like that for the Age of Sigmar one. It just seems like it's a sort of better unit, you know, for that game. But it might just be me reading it differently. Who knows? I thought I'd just mention the Age of Sigmar rules as well for those people that are interested. That is the end of my review. What do you guys think of this model? Do you still prefer the Forge World model over this one? Do you think the rules for the 40k are pretty decent? What are your thoughts? Please do put them in the comments below. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. Papa bless.